The first big snow of winter fell one night. When Billy woke up, he asked his mother if he could go outside to play in the fresh snow. His mother said, "Of course. But first, put on your winter clothes so you don't get cold." Billy was so excited on this very first day of big winter snow. He put on his hat, mittens, scarf, big winter coat, and warm boots, and then ran outside to play in the fresh falling snow. He began to roll snowballs. Soon he had rolled 2 big snowballs. He started to build a snowman and placed a perfectly rolled snowball on top as his head. He went inside to get 2 pieces of coal for the eyes, a carrot for the nose, and an old hat to place on his snowman's head. Billy was very pleased with his snowman friend. He had to go in for dinner, and while he was eating, one of his wiggly teeth fell out. His mother reminded him to put the tooth under his pillow for the tooth fairy. "The tooth fairy can wave her magic wand and turn your tooth into money," said Billy's mother. Billy said, "Thanks, Mom," and put the tooth in his pocket. He went outside to play in the snow and look at his snowman for a while before he had to go to bed. He decided he would put his tooth under the snowman's hat to see if the tooth fairy would find the tooth. The tooth fairy came overnight while Billy was sleeping and visited his snowman. Of course, she found the tooth under his hat. She waved her magic wand over the tooth, and it turned into a shiny new quarter. She then sprinkled her fairy dust all over the snowman's hat and the coin. When Billy woke up the next day, he ran outside to see if the tooth fairy had found the tooth underneath his snowman's hat. Billy then realized his snowman had moved overnight. There were tracks in the snow, too. When he looked right in his snowman's eyes, something was very different. All of a sudden, the snowman sneezed. Billy was totally surprised and a little scared. "This can't be real. You can't be alive," said Billy. "Are you sure about that?" asked the snowman. Billy couldn't believe it. "Well, a snowman can't talk or sneeze or even walk," said Billy. "Well, if you say so," said the snowman. Then the snowman lifted up his old hat to reveal the shiny new coin left by the tooth fairy. "By the way, I think this is yours," he said, pointing to the coin. "You are alive!" shouted Billy. The snowman gave Billy the coin. Billy smiled the biggest smile he had ever smiled. "It must have been the tooth fairy. She must have made you come alive," said Billy. He was so thrilled to have a real live snowman friend. He gave the snowman a big hug. For the rest of the winter, Billy and the snowman were inseparable. They played together all day, every day, from morning until bedtime. They had more fun than anyone could ever have. Finally, spring came, and it began to get warmer and warmer. One morning, Billy ran outside to play with the snowman, and he was nowhere to be found. All that Billy found was the old hat laying in the yard. Billy picked up the hat, and to his surprise, he found a tiny little snowman. His snowman had melted down to a tiny 6-inch tall mini snowman. The snowman thanked Billy for a great winter. Billy was a little sad, but the snowman reminded Billy all he needed to do was build him again next winter. The snowman promised Billy he would return. Billy made him pinky promise. and said he would miss him during the summer. The snowman and Billy said goodbye and promised to have as much fun the next winter. They would remain great friends forever. The end. A long time ago, a woodcutter lived on the edge of a large forest with his 2 children, a girl named Gretel and his son named Hansel, and his wife who was the children's stepmother. They were very poor, despite all the hardcutter's hard work. One year there was a terrible famine, and there was not enough food for the whole family. One night, the stepmother told the woodcutter they must take Hansel and Gretel deep into the forest and leave them there. Hansel overheard them talking. He told Gretel the terrible plan. Then, Hansel had a great idea. He would fill his pockets with white pebbles to leave a path back to the house when this happened. The next morning, the stepmother said they all had to go into the woods to gather firewood. As they walked deeper and deeper into the woods, Hansel dropped his white pebbles to mark the path back to their house. The next day, Hansel and Gretel returned back to the house. Their stepmother was very angry. She told the woodcutter to take them deeper into the woods. This time, Hansel marked their path with breadcrumbs from his pocket so they could find their way home. In the morning, there were no breadcrumbs. The woodland animals had eaten them all. Hansel and Gretel began to walk through the forest, and suddenly, they could not believe their eyes. They found the most amazing house, made of gingerbread, with a roof of icing and windows made of sugar. They were so hungry, they broke off a piece of the house to eat. Then they heard a voice. "Nibble, nibble like a mouse. Who's that nibbling at my house?" The door opened, and an old woman leaning on a cane frightened Hansel and Gretel. The woman then smiled and invited Hansel and Gretel into her house for a delicious dinner of pancakes and apples. After dinner, she said they could stay for the night, and she made up the beds for them, as sweet and kind as any grandmother. The children had no idea the old woman was really a wicked witch. Before Hansel and Gretel awoke the next morning, the wicked witch carried Hansel to a cage she had built and locked him inside. "Now I can fatten you up so I can eat you." The witch made Gretel cook, so Hansel would grow plump. The children cried and begged to be set free, but the wicked witch just laughed at them. Every day the wicked witch, who could not see very well, wanted to feel Hansel's fingers through the bars of the cage, so she could feel how plump he was getting, plump enough to eat. But Hansel cleverly only gave her an old bone to feel. She thought he was always much too thin for her to eat. Weeks went by, and the witch was becoming impatient, as Hansel didn't seem to be growing any fatter. One morning, the witch ordered Gretel to make a fire in the oven. After a while, the witch said to Gretel, "Climb up into the oven to see if the fire is ready." Gretel asked, "But how can I get into the oven to see?" The witch was impatient and climbed up herself to show Gretel how to look at the fire. Quick as a wink, Gretel shoved the old witch into the oven. Then she banged the door shut. Gretel ran over to free Hansel from the cage. They now had nothing to be afraid of. They explored the witch's house and found jewels and gold coins in every corner. Hansel and Gretel filled their pockets with all the riches and gold coins, and they set out to find their way home. They walked for a long time and finally came to the edge of a big lake. "How can we ever cross without a bridge or a boat?" said Hansel. "Here comes a swan," said Gretel. "I will ask her to help us." The beautiful swan agreed to carry them across the lake. Once they were on the other side, they recognized the forest edge, and they began to run down the path towards home. When the woodcutter saw them running towards him, he cried tears of joy for seeing his children. He did not have a moment of peace since he had left them in the forest. His wife had died while they were gone. The children emptied their pockets of all the gold, rubies, and diamonds. The father could not believe his eyes. The woodcutter, Hansel and Gretel all lived happily ever after, with the help of the witch's gold and treasures. Once upon a time in the city of Paris, a young man lived in the bell tower of the Notre Dame Cathedral. He was strong enough to ring the church bells. He was also very gentle, gentle enough to hold small birds in his hands. His only friends were the gargoyles. They did not mind that he had a hunchback and a face so ugly that his evil, cruel master named him Quasimodo, which means half-formed. Quasimodo knew nothing of the world below him. He only knew what his master told him. His master even taught Quasimodo to think of himself as a monster. Quasimodo wanted to join the crowds below him on the streets of Paris so bad, but his master would never let him leave. Quasimodo spent his days carving small wooden figures, wishing he could see the whole world below. Once a year, Paris celebrated the Festival of Fools. The gargoyles convinced Quasimodo to climb down the tower and attend the festival. Everyone wore masks at the festival, so no one would pay attention to Quasimodo's looks. Quasimodo went to the festival and saw the most beautiful gypsy dancer, Esmeralda. The master's newest soldier, Captain Phoebus, saw Esmeralda and also thought she was the most beautiful. All of a sudden, the crowd grabbed Quasimodo and made him king of fools, until they found out his face was not a mask. He was a monster. They tied him down with ropes so he could not escape. Quasimodo begged his master for help, but he refused. All of a sudden, the beautiful gypsy Esmeralda cut Quasimodo free and yelled at his master. "You mistreat Quasimodo like you mistreat my people," Esmeralda said. "You will pay for this," yelled the master, and he ordered his new Captain Phoebus to arrest her. Esmeralda snuck away into the cathedral with her goat. Captain Phoebus found her there and did not want to arrest her. He told her she could claim sanctuary as long as she stayed inside the church. "If she sets one foot outside this church, she will be my prisoner," said the cruel master. Quasimodo and Esmeralda became great friends. Quasimodo was confused because the master had told him how bad gypsies were, but Esmeralda was kind and good. And she did not think Quasimodo was a monster at all. "I think the master is wrong about both of us," said Esmeralda. Quasimodo helped her plan her escape. Quasimodo carried Esmeralda and her goat down the church walls to the street one night. She gave Quasimodo a special amulet and said, "Use this if you ever need help. It will show you how to find the Court of Miracles, the secret gypsy hideout." She promised she would visit Quasimodo again and kissed him on the cheek. When Esmeralda returned, she brought Captain Phoebus, who had been badly wounded. "The master attacked us, and Captain Phoebus tried to help. Please help him get well." Quasimodo agreed and hid the captain in the bell tower. The master still wanted to find the gypsies and thought Quasimodo might know where to find them all in their secret hideaway. The master tricked Quasimodo and told him he knew where the secret hideaway was, and he would attack the gypsies at dawn with 1,000 of his soldiers. This was just a trick by the cruel master. Quasimodo and Captain Phoebus decided they must use the special amulet to find Esmeralda and warn her. They secretly made their way to the Court of Miracles, but they had no idea the master and his soldiers were secretly following them. Quasimodo and Captain Phoebus led them to the secret gypsy hiding place. "Take them all away," the cruel master yelled to his soldiers. "No, please," begged Quasimodo. But the master had a heart of stone. The next day, the master had chained up Quasimodo in the bell tower and was going to punish Esmeralda in the courtyard below. Quasimodo broke his chains and rescued Esmeralda and brought her to safety in the bell tower. The master tried to break into the tower with his soldiers, but the gargoyles beat the master and his men. At last, the master's evil reign was over. The people of Paris cheered. Hip hip hooray for Quasimodo! Finally, Quasimodo understood he was not a monster at all. But to the people of Paris, he was a great hero. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, a lovely princess was born. The king and queen named their daughter Aurora. They invited everyone in the kingdom to the palace to celebrate her birth. Everyone except for the evil fairy Maleficent. The wicked fairy was so mad about not being invited that she snuck in anyway, in a flash of lightning, and she put a curse on beautiful Princess Aurora. Before the sun sets on her 16th birthday, she will prick her finger on a spinning wheel and die. Then, Maleficent, in a flash of thunder, disappeared. Luckily, 3 good fairies were at the party, and they softened the curse with a prophecy that said, "If this will happen, you will only sleep, not die. Your sleep will be ended when your true love gives you a kiss." The 3 fairies disguised themselves as peasant women and agreed to raise Aurora in the woods to keep her identity a secret until the night of her 16th birthday. The years passed and Princess Aurora grew into a lovely girl. She only knew the 3 women as her aunts, not as fairies, and they called her Briar Rose. The evil fairy Maleficent was always looking for her, but never could find her. Briar Rose always dreamed of meeting a handsome young man and falling in love. Then, on the day of her 16th birthday, a prince was riding through the woods. The prince heard Briar Rose singing. He asked her to dance, and before they knew it, they had fallen in love. Briar Rose had no idea he was a prince from a nearby kingdom, and the prince had no idea that she was really a princess. The 3 aunts were busy baking Briar Rose's 16th birthday cake. Briar Rose returned to the cottage and told her aunts about the stranger she had met and danced with. The aunts told Briar Rose her real name was Princess Aurora, and she would be returning to the castle that evening. The 3 fairies brought Princess Aurora home to her eagerly awaiting family. Everyone thought the princess had escaped Maleficent's evil curse. But no one knew Maleficent was hiding upstairs. As soon as Maleficent saw Aurora alone, she put her in a trance and led her into a room with a gleaming spinning wheel. "Touch the spindle, touch it," said Maleficent. Princess Aurora obeyed. She pricked her finger and fell to the floor. The 3 fairies found the sleeping princess and were heartbroken. They must now find the handsome stranger the princess had met in the woods. The fairies found the prince, and when he heard the news, he raced towards Princess Aurora's castle. Maleficent was waiting to stop the prince, but she was no match for the prince, and he made his way to the peaceful, beautiful, sleeping Princess Aurora. He knelt by her side and gently kissed her. Slowly, Princess Aurora opened her eyes. She smiled when she saw the face of the handsome stranger from the forest. He was her true love. Aurora sat up and took his hand. The prince asked Aurora to be his bride. "Yes, of course," replied Princess Aurora. They would live in his grand castle, close to her parents and her fairy aunts. Princess Aurora and the prince lived happily ever after.